The tent has ripped from the storm, sending forth cold winds blasting in with sharp whistling and wailing sounds paired with the obnoxious flapping of the tear. This marks 72 hours without food and 24 hours without water, with no idea how to get back home. Lacking any means to fix my tent, I'll have to try to find safety somewhere else. As I attempt to break down the tent, the reckless winds grab and pull it from my grip. I recovered the remainder of my gear, which consisted of 2 flares, an empty canteen, a sleeping bag, a dull hatchet, a Swiss Army knife, and my trusty handgun with 3 bullets left in the magazine. It's so hard to recognize anything at all with these icy razor winds and the bright snowy landscapes. I grab at the nearby trees for stability, as the harsh winds are practically knocking me to the frozen dirt. I'm so hungry. It's making it so hard to focus. Each step weighs a ton, pushing past this snowy Armageddon. The cold is really starting to break down morale. My fingers feel numb to the touch. I'm scared to look, so I keep myself focused on finding safety. I can hear my father screaming in my skull, so loud that it's bleeding into my eardrums, so loud it scares me. He raved like a lunatic, with disturbing and intense prayers that often gave me nightmares growing up.
Don't cry, bow your head and pray with me, as it was I, of the old, became of what you grieved. But because you suffered into repenting, for you felt a forsaken sorrow, so that you suffered no loss through them, for God's grief produces a repentance that leads to salvation without regret, where it only produces death.
The voice of my father sliced through me now, just as it did when it happened. Even though I'm so far, I can still feel his hateful glare as his words ricochet around in my skull, reminding me he's always tagging along, a festering memory. He always seemed to change all his prayers to fit what he was after. That only added to the traumatic mental turmoil. As my feet lose all feeling, with my legs going limp like rubber, I lose balance, falling face first in an unforgiving patch of snow. I roll over on my back, exhausted and delirious. The trees circle me like surgeons observing their next patient to be put under the blade. I snap out of it and sit up before slowly getting up to my feet. As I walk with an aching limp, something catches my attention. If my eyes aren't tricking me, I believe I'm seeing a cave entrance. As I get closer to the perforation in the icy stone, I have no idea on the level of risk I'm dealing with, but the cruel extremes of the environment have left me with little option but to seek shelter inside. I will try to stay close to the opening in case anything happens. Not long after walking deeper into the cave, the loud, persistent winds become more of a roaring echo. This cave seems to go on forever. The cave quickly went from loud, windy, and bright to quiet and dark in such a short walk. With all the dangers from falling debris, deadly gases, to scared animals willing to defend their home, I thought it would be best to huddle up in my sleeping bag here and try to get warm. In only minutes, my sleeping bag is full of unwanted guests. I feel the itchy and pinchy movements of crawling bugs. I crawl out of my bag in a hasty frenzy, feeling for one of the flares. I spark the end, exposing the ticks coating my body and sleeping bag, like everything was one moving texture. Even the ground that I thought was gravel was actually a surge of large bulbous ticks flooding from a freshly expired grizzly carcass. I sling my bag like a madman in a crazy attempt to repossess my sleeping bag. I use the remainder of the flare's light to to find a new spot and remove any ticks that latched on my gear or body. I pull off my gloves while I could see, and to my horror, my fingertips are bright red and losing sensation. I'm starting to go into the early stages of frostbite. I'm rubbing my hands together like I'm trying to start a fire, huddled tight. A fire would be nice. Something warm to fight the surrounding cold of the cave. I get up wrapping the sleeping bag around me like a hooded cowl. My body can't stop shaking in its desperate attempt to generate some kind of heat. I strike the end of my flare with the coarse end of the flare cap. My last flare. I better make good use of it. The burning red light reveals more of the deep tunnel system ahead. As I walk down the tunnel, I feel humidity on my face, as well as a slightly warm feeling. Even if I find water in this cave, I can't risk drinking the toxic mold-ridden water. These strange holes started appearing in the cave. Not like natural ones, but carved, maybe with a pickaxe, but I don't see any signs of mining equipment. Uncertain, I walked into the dark, narrow tunnel. My path goes from dark to complete darkness. With no source of light, I'm forced to feel the sometimes moving wall. These feelings would range from rocky to slithering, slimy, sharp, pointy, and crab-like textures. After uncomfortably feeling my way forward, I did notice a dim light further down. What is that? The slippery stone floor and warm water puddles have me constantly tripping as I get closer to the light. The blue lights come into focus as a vast collection of glowing cave worms dimly leading the way, as well as revealing all the leeches and water scorpions fighting over earthworms. The deeper I went, the more warm and teeming with life the tunnel became. The wet tunnel led to a large, tall, cylindrical stone room lit only by the glowworms coating the walls. As I walked to the center of the room, I notice a puddle of blood riddled with teeth. I look up to notice a mangled body hanging upside down in a narrow hole in the ceiling. It was so hard to make out its sex due to the level of torture inflicted on the poor individual. Cuts and carvings so deep that it's missing various parts, including lips, teeth, tongue, and genitals. It can't still be alive. Hello? It opens its eyes, frantically, swinging its body against the wall back and forth until it falls on me. I tried to convince the unfortunate victim to hang on to me while I tried to carry it out to safety, but I was having no luck. Speaking in mumbles and painful wails while convulsing and flopping on the floor. Everything I was doing to help felt useless. It sounds like a tortured animal. I tried one more time to carry the victim away, but its wailing forced me to run further down the tunnel ahead of me. The glowing tunnel led to a four-way. The left was collapsed, leaving me only two options. Unsure, I take a right, leading to another round room. I see a corpse sitting back to the wall. This one looks like it was tortured like the last, eyes clawed away and lips sewn shut. A phone is right beside it. I doubt it could get service, but the light would be helpful. And getting to the cave entrance may be all I need to get a signal. I reach for the phone. It grabs me with what's left of its hand. Just a thumb with a middle finger squeezing in terror. It mumbled while trying to pull me closer. I pulled my arm away, falling to the floor. It was putting its hands out like it was pleading. I crab walk away from it till I can manage to get back on my feet. I can hear something coming closer. I run further down a tunnel ahead of me, hearing hideous and painful shrieks from the room I just left. Each room looking like the last, I become less certain of a way out of this labyrinth by the second. After running in circles from whatever is trailing behind me, I find a tunnel somewhat familiar to where I started. I take it without thinking, and it leads me through the wet, bug-ridden walls I remember. I would be relieved, but I'm almost certain that that thing is still stalking me. With the phone light on, I'm making quick work of the tunnels, but making it that much easier for that thing to see me. As I got to the tunnel with the carved holes, I knew I was getting closer. While running, I felt what I could compare to getting caught in a snare. Long, lanky hands sweeping me off my feet down the narrow hole in the wall. I grab the gun out my holster, but I can't fit it past my side to take the shot. I aim the gun in the opposite direction and squeeze the trigger. The shot sent my ears ringing from the enclosed area and was enough to loosen the skinny creature's grip. I climb as fast as I can up the slippery tunnel with that thing right behind me. I managed to crawl out of the constricting space and sent another shot down, causing the creature to scream and flee further down the hole. As I make it to the entrance, I check the phone with my gun aimed down the depths of the cave. It has low signal, but just maybe enough to make a call. I dial 911 with my eyes trained on the darkness before me and my finger on the trigger. It's hard to keep the gun steady, as my body can't stop shaking. The skin of my hands is starting to stick to the cold metal handle of the pistol. I can barely hear the tone of the phone over the loud whistling wind from outside. I just managed to hear a voice on the line, but before I could respond, a pale hand from above grabs my forearm, causing me to squeeze the trigger, wasting my last round. I can see it in the hole, looking at me with those large, sunken, glowing eyes, motionless and lacking expression, even though it knows it has won, like it wasn't happy about this at all. Just like the earthworms in the cave. I was another meal. It slowly but firmly pulls me up the hole, into the darkness once more. I would have fought, but something about its indifferent face paralyzed me. The further it pulls me, the tighter the hole around me becomes, till I can barely breathe as my ribs begin to crack. Every time I exhale, the grip of my stone grave constricts me tighter like a python, squeezing out my last breath. I try to think of fonder times in my last moment. I'm not sure if I'm doing this intentionally, or if this is simply what your brain does when it knows death is coming, and coming fast. Like my mind wanted to present me a picture collage of my life. But the only thing that it could muster was everything my father said that made me want to leave, that led me to this cold, unforgiving place, blaming him and cursing his name for ever bringing me into this pitiful planet. These thoughts filled me with the smallest tickle of cruel irony, as this tortured being bites and sucks the flesh and fat off my cold index finger.